Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Living Proof Podcast. I'm here today in my dorm room. I think it's pretty nice. I had something better planned, but I found out my room was different than I thought it was, or my suite was different than I thought it was. So, this is probably going to be the setup for most of the podcast, if not all of them. But I think it's nice. I love it. I like the room. It's very wonderful and cozy. But yeah, I moved into college a couple days ago and have been running around ever since. I was in an early move-in engineering volunteer thing, which was pretty fun. Then I had a Christian club thing yesterday, which was also very fun. Met some wonderful people. And I was eating lunch today, and I've also met a wonderful person. So Xander, if you see this, nice to meet you, man. You're great. But yeah, that's just my week, I guess. Wanted to get this out, well, today. I'm recording this on Thursday. Wanted to get this out Thursday, but have been very busy, so this will probably be on Friday. So happy Friday, everybody. Love to see you. And so today our starting verses are going to be, well, let me first introduce the topic. Today we're going to be talking about wisdom. And not wisdom from a worldly sense, like knowing what to do, how to make money, stuff like that. We're talking about wisdom from a godly sense. And the verses I have to coincide with that are Proverbs 9, verses 11 through 12. Wisdom will multiply your days and add years to your life. If you become wise, you will be one to benefit. If you scorn wisdom, you will be the one to suffer. So, wisdom is definitely something that a lot of us need nowadays. I think anyone can benefit from wisdom, and wisdom is beneficial. It's kind of my first point. Wisdom is beneficial, and so is the pursuit of knowledge. But that's not all there is to life. That being said, wisdom is still a great thing to have when you're struggling through things and you need advice, someone to talk to. I know a lot of times for me, well, I guess I could tell a story. So my senior year of high school, my second semester began very, very rough, and it's because of my fault. Did a little thing, was very controversial, but a lot of people dropped me, and I was feeling very lost and didn't know what to do. So I turned to my friend Daniel, who was on here a couple weeks ago, and he pretty much was with me the entire time. Granted, there were other friends that were with me as well, but he was one of the main people that was in my corner, giving me advice, giving me wisdom. And through that, I gained knowledge of not only what to do in this life, but what to do, how to talk to God, stuff like that. So in circumstances like that, clinging to wisdom is definitely the most important thing. Because without wisdom, we're kind of misguided, you know? Without common sense, okay, wisdom and common sense kind of tie hand in hand, at least to me. Because the more wisdom you gain, the more your common sense increases, right? If I'm a toddler and I know nothing about the world, common sense to me is to pick my nose whenever I want, go to the bathroom whenever I want, and pretty much throw a tantrum when I don't get something. Gaining more wisdom about the world would be, okay, I know not to pick my nose when I'm out in public. That's just not socially acceptable. It's also weird. I know not to go to the bathroom whenever because I'm not a child. I got potty trained, and it's not really acceptable to go to the bathroom whenever because that's just disgusting. Who does that? If you go to the bathroom whenever, wherever you go, you're kind of weird. But anyway, and it's not like the best thing ever to throw a tantrum whenever I want because you're an adult. You're going to be an adult eventually. I'm an adult now, which is crazy to think about. But you can't just throw a tantrum whenever you want. You need to have concept of not only the area you're in, but what knowledge you need in order to succeed in that area. And so the same thing ties into spiritual wisdom, where when I'm a spiritual baby, I think, oh, it's okay to do this, it's okay to do that, blah, blah, blah. Where at the same time, when I get more spiritually mature and gain more spiritual knowledge, I begin to realize, okay, maybe I shouldn't go out and party every weekend because I could be bettering myself by reading scripture or spending time with God or something like that. And maybe I shouldn't really be drinking or smoking because that indulges in pleasures that lead me away from God as opposed to pleasures that lead me towards God. This is not hashing at anyone. This is not dissing anybody. This is my personal opinion of the matter. And if you have your own personal opinion, that's feel free to stick to it. I'm not dictating your faith. I'm not one to dictate your faith. I'm explaining my perspective. And my perspective is that when you gain knowledge spiritually, there are things that you need to learn how to do and things that you need to learn how to not do. Throughout the entirety of Proverbs, it pretty much goes through many tips of wisdom, but it also highlights a very distinct contrast between wisdom of, I guess, the habits of a fool and the habits of a wise person. There's contrast all over, from a wise person listens to advice while a fool mocks advice. A wise person listens to instruction from their father while a fool goes and displeases his mother. Verses like that. And there are verses later on in the Bible, like I know Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus talks about how a wise person listens to his instruction, and it's like a person that builds a house on rock, has foundation, strong, solid foundation. And so wisdom is definitely emphasized in the Bible, not only by God, but by those around him, like Paul, the disciples, those before in the Old Testament as well. Solomon was the wisest person ever, and I'll get to that later. But wisest person ever, and he emphasized the pursuit of wisdom, not only the pursuit of wisdom. He emphasized the pursuit of God as well as wisdom. Because, as he wrote in Ecclesiastes, if you don't know, Ecclesiastes is a book of the Bible in the Old Testament about pretty much how everything you could pursue, wealth, fame, power, money, is worth nothing unless you pursue God first and add all that to yourself. Well, he adds all that to you, but you know what I mean. I mentioned this in an earlier podcast about how that book talks about that kind of topic, but I think in this episode, it applies more to the pursuit of knowledge, and the verses I have here for that is in the first chapter of Ecclesiastes, Ecclesiastes 1:16 through 18. I said to myself, look, I am wiser than any of the kings who ruled in Jerusalem before me. I have greater wisdom and knowledge than any of them. So I set out to learn everything from wisdom to madness and folly. But I learned firsthand that pursuing all this is like chasing the wind. The greater my wisdom, the greater my grief. To increase knowledge only increases sorrow. And I think that's kind of important because that's very true. If you think about it, the more you know about stuff, it's kind of sad to think about it. You can look at our society today. The more you know about situations going on in other countries, you don't just look at it face value like, oh, this country's great. There's poverty going on behind the scenes. There's discrimination going on behind the scenes. There's wars going on behind the scenes. I know everyone knows the war between Palestine and Israel. But even like on a lower scale, things you don't see every day, things that aren't advertised in the news, those kind of things are things you don't know about. You gain knowledge about it and you're like, man, this is kind of sad. I don't really know if I really wish I didn't know this beforehand. And that's why a lot of people say ignorance is bliss. On the other hand, knowledge is sorrow. Like, you know, it's kind of two and two. But without knowing things, you cannot really be successful in life. And I don't mean that in a sense of, oh, if you know nothing, you're gonna fail. If you're an idiot, you're never gonna succeed in life. That's not what I mean. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you don't have knowledge, there are some things you literally cannot do without knowledge. Like you don't know how to drive a car the second you get out of the womb. You don't know how to provide for yourself without learning. You don't know how to pay your taxes, pay mortgages, work without some instruction, some knowledge, some training. Knowledge is necessary. But with that, there comes a sorrow, as in the more you know. I think also he meant the more you know, the more you realize it will not satisfy you. Because in the verses before, he talked about how he was looking for things to satisfy him. And so he thought that wisdom, knowing everything, would satisfy him. And the more he knew, the more sorrow he gained. So I believe that could also tie into the fact that the more you know about something, the more you know about the world, I suppose, the more you realize that it will not satisfy you. And that's something that's really important because we all know God only God satisfies us, you know? So the more you try and find things to take God's place, the more you realize that nothing really can. I know for me, I've been a person that kind of is influenced by others to the point where if I see someone knowing about something or if I see someone participating in their own hobby, I'd be like, that's kind of cool. I want to do that. So I know one thing is just like cars. A lot of my friends are car people. I'm not technically a car person. I like a certain car. It's a certain BMW, but I'm not, okay, I know that car is a Z3. I know that car is a 330i from 2019 with a specific inline and a specific engine. Like, I don't know that. But I do know that I like a certain car. My friends, every time they talk about cars, when I see that, I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I want to do that. So I desire the knowledge and I desire wisdom in that sense, in the way that, okay, I'm going to learn everything about this car, this brand, blah, blah, blah. So then I go do that for the next couple of days. But then the more I know, the more I realize, man, this actually isn't like fulfilling. Like I'll be into that for a couple of days and then later on I realize like, man, that's not really what I wanted. And this is kind of just boring. And that goes for a lot of things that I try and learn about. It's not that I don't have interest in them. It's just that they don't fill the hole that I had. They don't fill the hole that I thought it could fill. You know what I mean? There'll be times where I think that knowing about certain world situations or knowing about things on YouTube will fill some gap in my soul that I need to be the most knowledgeable person on the planet and know how to fix so many things. That happened this summer as well when I was trying to fix certain things at the concession stand that I worked at. I would try to fix a fryer, I would try to fix a pizza oven or something like that, and when I didn't know, I would try to figure out everything, like every way to know so that I wouldn't have to ask somebody else. And then it's not like the end all be all to be the most knowledgeable person in the room. And I realize that now that the more you seek it, the more it just doesn't satisfy you. So I think Solomon definitely tapped into that because he knew everything. He was the wisest person on the planet, and he still didn't find what he was looking for until he found God. And he realized that riches, power, fame, knowledge couldn't satisfy him. And some people feel like knowledge kind of satisfies them. Like they want to be the smartest in the room. It gives them a satisfying feeling to know everything about everything. But you're never going to be the smartest. You're never going to know everything. You're never going to be the wisest person in the room. Or I guess you're never going to be the wisest person on the planet. I should say that much. There's always going to be someone that's smarter than you. And even then, if you think you're the smartest, you're really not. I remember there was a Bible verse, I think, in 1 Corinthians that said, if any man thinks he knows anything, he knows nothing yet as he ought to know. 1 Corinthians 8:2, I believe. And I think that verse is really cool because it says, if you think you know anything, you really don't know what you need to know. And so I guess that kind of ties into, if you think you're the smartest, then there's something you're leaving out because no one is smarter than God. No one can outsmart the creator of the universe. No one can outsmart the guy that knows everything. So I think that verse is definitely tied into this society today because people think they're so smart, especially on the internet. Oh my goodness, the comments you see is about people thinking that they're so smart and that they know everything and that they're going to correct so many people. It's like, where's the humility? Where's the love, man? Where's the submission to be like, okay, you're smarter than me. I accept that. And I do see that sometimes, but a lot of the time people will stand their ground and be stubborn because they want to be right so badly because they think they know everything. Because they put their whole time and effort into knowing everything. And so if they don't know something, then that means pretty much everything they've done is worthless. At least I think so. Because if, say I spend all my time practicing soccer, right? And someone tells me I've been practicing the wrong sport. I'm going to be like, No, I spent all my time in life on soccer. I think I would know what soccer is and what this specific rule is. But say I was wrong, it would mean like my entire life has been amounted to nothing pretty much. And so I think a lot of people may get scared about that they've put all their time and energy into something that will not matter. And Solomon knows that. He put all his time and energy into things that did not matter to realize they didn't matter. And eventually he was like, yeah, God's the only answer, because when you have all the knowledge, all the money, all the fame, all the power, there comes a thought that is also wisdom to say, okay, when you rule out everything, there is only one answer, and that answer has to be God, because what else is there in existence? Nothing. There's nothing else that can satisfy but the blood of Jesus. Anyway, but yeah, another verse that I think is very good, another also from Proverbs 3, verses 12 through 18. Joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. For wisdom is more profitable than silver, and her wages are better than gold. Wisdom is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. She offers you long life in her right hand, and riches and honor in her left. She will guide you down delightful paths. All her ways are satisfying. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly. And that is very true. Happy are those who hold wisdom tightly. Because when you don't think about the things you learned, you run back into the same mistakes over and over and over again. And some people say, oh, that's common sense. Where do you get your common sense from? Because I know it's not yourself. You get it from wisdom. And true wisdom comes from God. Proverbs talks about how wisdom was there when God was creating the mountains and creating the universe pretty much. And wisdom was like the foundation of everything. God created wisdom. So if wisdom was there when creation was there, then we don't get common sense from ourselves. We get common sense from God. And to think that you could abandon wisdom and think that you're going to get by is just not very true. You got to hold fast to wisdom. You got to hold fast to what people are saying to you. Funny story from my perspective. So my dad, my lovely father, he is one to give advice whenever he can, to always input his thoughts into our lives, because he wants us to not make the same mistakes he did, or he wants us to not make mistakes at all. Obviously, we're going to make mistakes and make choices that are wrong, because we're not perfect, we're human. But his goal was to make sure that we made the least amount of mistakes and had the most successful life. And to me, he always tells me, since I'm the younger child, he always says that I have an example and I have it easier because I have Grant to follow. And Grant, my brother, I think he's a very great role model. Someone I would follow to the day I die, because a lot of things I know come from him, and a lot of things I stand for, I'd say they were influenced by him in some way or another. But that being said, the other day I was trying to come down the campus with two giant speakers, right? They were speakers for my DJ system that I had at home, and I wanted to bring them down here. So for the week leading up to, I think, Saturday night, the day before I came down, the week leading up to Saturday, my brother was telling me, okay, don't bring those speakers. It's not a good idea. The walls are thin. They're going to annoy people. Blah, 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 blah. And the entire time he never mentioned what my dad would say. And I just didn't heed his advice. I didn't care for wisdom. I was like, okay, I'm going to do things my way because I think I'm right. Because I think I know more than the guy who's been living 2 years longer than me at the dorm that I'm moving into. Also, I know more than the guy who's lived however many years my dad is. I know, but I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to expose him like that. But however many years my dad's been alive and has been through so many more situations. But I know better, right? Like, I'm smarter. I'm the smartest one in the room, right? No, I was wrong. So I go tell my father these things, that I am bringing these speakers and my controller for DJing. And for the next 30 minutes to an hour, we were in a discussion / argument about why I should bring them and why I shouldn't. And let's just say I lost that argument in a very humbling and humiliating way. So I'm not saying this to go challenge your parents or challenge whoever you think is smarter than you and then get humbled. I'm saying that if I had listened to my brother I would have never been in that situation in the first place, and I would have never had to upset my father or upset myself or upset others because I could have just listened to him, the guy that clearly had more wisdom in the matter as opposed to just doing my own thing. My dad also often says that I try and reinvent the wheel, which is pretty much, if you never heard that analogy or that saying before, you try to do something that someone's already done, but you try to do it your way because you think your way is better. And I am definitely a victim of that. I try to do stuff like that all the time. But I think it's important to learn from other people. And why do I say this? Who's the greatest example you can learn from? Jesus Christ. Lived his whole life out, got it documented in a book that also has many other instructions that we can learn from other people, and gave it to us not for free, but some people get it for free. But for a small little cause, you can buy a Bible, or if you go to church for free, you can get a Bible and read it for a little bit. He gave it to us pretty much for free. All that instruction, the best example you could ever have for free. So to try and reinvent the wheel for Christ is pretty much trying to live a perfect life on my own with my own wisdom. I can't do that. That's literally impossible. That's trying to be a perfect human being based off of worldly wisdom, based off of worldly values, and with no sense or basis of anything. It doesn't make any sense. So the most important way, or the most beneficial way to live out a wise life, is to follow the advice of Christ, because he gave us so much wisdom. Sermon on the Mount, through his many parables, through his teachings, through his miracles, through his death and resurrection, even through his ascension to heaven. Like, he gave us so many examples and so much wisdom in the time that he was alive. And not just wisdom for living. He gave us wisdom for how we treat others. He gave us wisdom for how we live our own personal lives. He gave us wisdom for how we should act towards him. He gave us wisdom for how we should pray, how we should think, how we should, I don't even know, like the amount of wisdom that Christ has given us through himself is, I have no words. I am left speechless in awe of Christ, because he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to be that person, but he was that person for us. And that's the most important thing to me, I think, because to receive all of that wisdom and to not follow it, to say pretty much, God, step aside, I know what I'm doing, I think it's the biggest slap in the face. Imagine being a perfectly selfless human being, also being God, and you die. You literally take upon the sins of the world on yourself, die on the cross, and then raise 3 days later, defeating sin, death, Satan, everything, to give people a second chance at life. And they're going to read that story and be like, huh, what a nice fairy tale. Anyway, back to living like I know, like I'm the king of my own life. Like, you know how big of a slap in the face that is? And so many people, I myself included, I've done that. I've done that days after day after day. Many other people have done that as well. I know for a fact, because many other people are not Christians. Oh my goodness, my eye is killing me. Hold on. But it's just like, man, how in the world am I supposed to? I don't even know. Like, I don't know how people can go around and acting like they're the king of their own lives when Christ gave us so much wisdom and we refuse to take it. You know how much of an insult that is? And that just goes to show, like, it's not that you need wisdom, but you need wisdom, man. You need his wisdom. If anything, you need his wisdom. You can go around not knowing anything about the world, but if you don't know anything about Christ, then what's the point in learning anything about the world? That's what Solomon said. What's the point of knowing everything if you don't know about God? What's the point of me, for example, going around knowing so much about engineering when I don't know the first thing about salvation? Like, I could be a successful engineer, sure. I could be the best engineer ever, sure. But where is my devotion to Christ? If I do not know the creator of engineering, if I do not know the creator of my life, and I don't know the creator of the universe, then who am I working for? Myself? That's not going to satisfy me. And if it does, then I'm deluding myself, because it won't in the future. I'm going to get tired of it. The same way Solomon got tired of his riches and power and wealth and fame. It's it's not substantial. It's not long lasting. Christ is long lasting. He's eternal. His love is eternal. His wisdom is eternal. And his grace is eternal. Taking the time to be invested in him and to be devoted to him is in technicality the smartest thing you could ever do. The wisest thing you could ever do. And this then ties into our calling to go out and give that wisdom to other people. If I'm to sit here, which is partially why I'm doing this podcast, because if I'm to sit here with all this knowledge, all this wisdom in my own brain and not give it to other people, I'm pretty much just being selfish, right? To go out into the world and act like God doesn't exist, knowing full well in my heart he saved my life and he's the only reason I'm alive today, is a big insult to Christ, and definitely not what I'm supposed to be doing on this earth. We are called to be disciples. We are called to lead others to Christ. So to keep the wisdom of Christ to yourself is being 1, selfish, 2, going against God's will, and 3, C1 and 2. Like, I can't sit here anymore and then just keep it to myself, which is why I'm trying day by day, week by week, to at least have one person watch these videos. Because if one person is watching this, that means one person is getting knowledge and wisdom that I have gained through my life experiences and through other people's life experiences that have been given to me, and giving that to other people. So if I can do that at least to one person, I'm making a difference. And I've seen that I've gotten tens of hundreds of views on some of these, at least one of these videos. So something's been done right. Some people are paying attention. Some people are listening. And I think that's worth its weight. To share this wisdom with others is one of the most fulfilling things I can do as I'm here on earth, because we don't have that much time. If we're being real, we don't have that much time. So to be doing this weekly, if not daily, is definitely a blessing for me. And it's definitely a blessing for others too. To get me in the proper mindset every week, to recenter my life around God every week, and then to share that knowledge with others every week is something I want to try to do. So I'm going to try and do that every single week of college. I'm going to try and live that out every single week of college. And I think the same should apply to you guys. If you know people around you that don't have that wisdom, that don't have that knowledge, share it with them. Don't keep it to ourselves. How can we keep this to ourselves? This isn't something you keep to yourself, if that makes sense. You know how you would go around sharing, oh, I just got this new car. Guys, come check out my new car. Have you seen my new car? Oh my goodness, my new car is so great. Like, if you had a new car or a new bike or a new anything, you'd probably share it with people, right? Because you want people to know how great your thing is. So now, take that with Christ's wisdom, the wisdom that God gives us through the Bible, through his teachings, through church, through prayer, through scripture, through historical documents, through anything. And if you have that same mentality about it, you're not going to keep it to yourself. You're not going to want to keep it to yourself. Because how can you keep something that great bottled in? You want to share it with other people, right? The same way I want to say, oh, guys, look at this cool microphone I bought. It's so nice and lovely, which it is, but I didn't buy it. God gave me the opportunity to buy it. God gave me that money. And so to brag about it and say, oh yeah, it's mine. I did that on my own. No, I didn't. So to say I gained knowledge and wisdom all on my own, that's a lie too. To say, oh, I'm the smartest person in the room, that's a lie too. And to keep all that wisdom to yourself, saying, oh, I earned it, it's mine, definitely shouldn't be shared with everybody else, that is a lie too. And I think people need to understand and realize that, because you don't go around sharing the good news of Christ, you're not being a good disciple. And I don't mean this as a hateful, like, man, you suck, you're doing terrible kind of thing, because you're not. We're all human, we're all trying. I'm sure you're doing a great job. Keep going. But we have to also remember our responsibilities. It's the same way that I'm in this room. Every now and then the floor gets dirty, as floors do. It's a floor. Some stuff falls on it, stuff gets sticky, stuff messes up, you know? If I don't take care of my responsibilities and clean the floor every now and then, it's going to become a mess. And I'm not going to want to be in this room because it's going to be so messy. Messy? Okay, sorry. My brain tweaked. But if you have a responsibility to Christ, you need to fulfill that out too. We all have a responsibility to Christ. It's not just you guys. I'm saying for myself as well. We all have a responsibility. And I'm going to be honest, I don't fulfill it all the time. I go out sometimes and walk around, and I'm not proclaiming Christ as the king of my life. I'm not, and I don't mean to go on the corner of a street and shout it to everybody that I know. I mean, like, I'll be in conversation and I'll be boasting about my own things. I'll be boasting about my own life. I will be acting like I'm in control of the things that I do. That's what I mean by not proclaiming Christ. To be in conversation, to be so close to the opportunity of speaking life through him and then not doing it. To take the buildup, to go to the peak of a mountain, you're right about to reach the top, to tell everybody about Christ, and you then say, I did this myself, and go back down. That's not what I want to do, and that's not what anybody should do. To have wisdom is to know that Christ is king, yes, but it's also to know when and where to share the gospel, and to not care about what other people think when I'm doing it. I know a lot of times social anxiety will kick in, but you have to be wiser than that, man. People cared about Christ. He was perfect, and people didn't like him. They sent him on a cross to die because they thought he was, I don't even know. How could you think a perfect person isn't perfect? Beats me, but it's just crazy. So if they hated and persecuted the one perfect man to ever walk this earth, what difference does it make if they persecute you? And for a good reason, I should be persecuted, not by them, by God. God's the only true judge. But I deserve it. So who cares? They're gonna judge anyway. Just move on and do what you need to do. Be a faithful servant to the Lord, because they're gonna judge you regardless. They're gonna judge the Lord regardless. So why not speak to that one person that's in the group, that one person at your table that's listening to you, that one person at that table that spiked some curiosity in their brain, and they're like, this is kind of interesting. Maybe I should look more into the Bible, look more into Jesus and see what he's about. That one person that will listen to you. How will you ever know if you keep quiet about it, if you never speak about it, if you think that you're too wise or too smart to say that in a social setting because it's not socially appropriate to say it here and now? I gotta be smarter about it. I need the perfect time and the perfect place. I need something. I need some cue, some vocal cue to say, oh yeah, I know God. No, you don't. There's never a perfect time and a perfect place to talk about Christ, unless you're at church. That's the technically perfect place and perfect time, because that's the house of God. But if you're out in the social setting, there's never going to be a perfect opportunity to sneak, oh, hey, you know about Jesus? And that's never going to be perfect. And Ecclesiastes 4, I believe, talks about if you wait for the perfect time, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life, man. I think it's either Ecclesiastes or Hebrews. I believe it's Ecclesiastes. If you wait for the perfect time to say or do something, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life. Sometimes you have to just take a leap of faith. And that's where faith and wisdom comes in. Wisdom is knowing that God is faithful. Faith is knowing that God will provide. So you need wisdom to recognize God's faithfulness in order to just be who you need to be. And this kind of turned out into a go out into the world and be wise kind of thing, as opposed to keep wisdom for yourself. And that's kind of what I wanted it to be. If people are wise, I don't want their wisdom to stay with themselves. I want everyone to know about Christ. I want the whole world to know about the Christ. And I hope this podcast gets very popular and everybody knows about the Lord, because that is the only way. I guess it's one of the only ways I can, get God to everybody is social media and YouTube, because a lot of people see these videos. A lot of people are on Spotify, which I will probably put these on Spotify soon. A lot of people are on Snapchat, on Instagram. There are many ways to reach people. So if I'm even at least reaching one person, I know I'm making a difference. And it may not be the wisest thing for me to try and do this while going through school and all that. The wisest thing from an academic perspective. But I'm firmly confident that God will provide for me regardless. Because I'm truly trying to get the word out there. And I know I might be busy sometimes, but I know God will make a way for me to work it out. Because I know he's not going to tell me If he tells me to stop doing this, I will stop doing this. But I think getting the word out there is more important to me than a couple of grades on a piece of paper. So that's kind of all I have for today. If you didn't take anything away from this episode, take away the fact that we have wisdom. Wisdom comes from Christ. Wisdom comes from the Bible, from prayer, from scripture. But if you don't go out and share that wisdom, then it's pretty much effectively meaningless, because doing God a service is going out and preaching about Him. Wisdom without God is nothing. So to have wisdom without going out and sharing about it and glorifying God is ultimately nothing. You don't have anything. Solomon talks about it. I'm talking about it. And you guys should talk about it as well. If you don't have wisdom and you don't share it with other people, if you have wisdom and you don't share it with other people, then what good is it worth? What good is it to be wise and just keep that wisdom to yourself? It's kind of selfish and kind of not like Christ at all. So that's about it. It was kind of, I feel like, I don't know, kind of an iffy episode, but I am also kind of tired and things are slowly settling into place. So next week, I will probably be with Brandon because he'll be in here, and so we'll probably be talking about something. But can't wait to see you guys then. So happy to be back, and yeah, that's about it. See you guys next week.